My husband didn't just cheat on me. He did it with my sister, and I exposed them both on her wedding day. I know that sounds insane, but that's exactly where my life shattered and rebuilt itself. For years, I thought I was building a stable marriage, supporting a husband who claimed he was working late, trusting a sister who always told me I was overthinking. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just watched the two people I loved most slip into their secret world, smiling at their phones while I convinced myself everything was fine. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't stay hidden forever. And when I discovered their messages, hotel plans, late-night confessions, whispered jokes about how clueless I was, I knew one thing. If they were bold enough to betray me, I would be bold enough to let the truth destroy them. And I chose her wedding day. I lost 7 years of marriage and an entire sister because I trusted the two people I loved the most. That's how this story begins. Not with a fight, not with a clue I missed, but with a level of trust so naive it almost feels embarrassing to admit. Looking back, I can see every red flag waving like a warning sign, but at the time, I just kept telling myself everything was fine. That's who I was. The stable one, the reasonable one, the person who believed love could fix anything. Daniel always knew how to play into that. He was charming in a quiet way, smart, composed, the type of man people described as steady. I was the calm partner who handled the boring adult things. Bills, schedules, stability. I never minded it. I liked taking care of us, and he liked letting me. If there was an imbalance, I thought that's just what marriage looked like. Someone gives more. Someone trusts more. And in our case, that someone was me. Then there was Fiona, my younger sister, the golden child of our family. People loved her instantly. She had that bubbly, effortless warmth that made strangers feel like friends. She planned weddings for a living, which always amused me because she loved romance more than anyone I knew. Growing up, she followed me everywhere. As adults, I protected her the same way, emotionally, financially, socially. I thought that made me a good sister. Turns out, it made me an easy target. The imbalance didn't show itself all at once. It crept in quietly. Daniel started working late, not just once or twice, but regularly. He'd come home tired, distracted, always with some vague excuse about clients or deadlines. Fiona, of course, defended him every single time. "You're overthinking," she'd say. "He adores you. You're just stressed." She said it with such confidence, like she knew him better than I did. I didn't realize how literal that was. Then Daniel started caring about his appearance more than usual. New clothes, skincare routines, early morning runs, even though he'd always hated exercise. When I asked if something was going on, he acted offended by the question. Fiona chimed in again. "Nat, let the man glow up. Do you want him to look old at 30? They laughed about it, and I forced myself to laugh too. But inside, something twisted. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just observed. That's who I became, someone watching her own marriage from the outside. And the more I watched, the more I noticed things that didn't fit. His phone lighting up at 1 a.m., his grin while typing, his last-minute cancellations, his sudden need for space. Sometimes I felt less like a wife and more like I was babysitting two oversized children who needed constant excuses made for them. Yet I stayed calm. I always stayed calm. The turning point didn't feel dramatic at all. It happened on a random night, when Daniel fell asleep early on the couch, phone still in his hand. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Something in the back of my mind reminded me of an old detail. Years ago, we had linked our Apple accounts to share apps. I hadn't thought about it in forever. But, suddenly, it felt like a door I was finally allowed to open. I logged into the shared account. No shaking hands. No adrenaline. Just a quiet, steady curiosity. And there it was, a message thread between Daniel and my sister. At first, it looked harmless. Siblings-in-law talk, right? Quick updates, casual emojis. But the tone shifted as I scrolled. Messages got longer, softer, more intimate. Then I found the ones that snapped something inside me. Not in anger, but in clarity. Late-night goodnights. Inside jokes about me. A picture of Fiona wearing Daniel's sweater with a caption, "Stole this from you. Hope you don't mind." My stomach didn't drop. My world didn't end. I just stared at the screen, feeling everything inside me go quiet. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the phone. I only started saving everything. Call logs, screenshots, photos, deleted messages that still synced through iCloud. Every piece of truth they had carelessly left behind. I gathered it all without a word, without even changing my expression. And the calmer I got, the worse the reality became. Because once you open one door, you realize there are a dozen others behind it. And as I kept digging, I had no idea how deep the hole went. I just knew one thing. The deeper I went, the more the truth stopped being painful and started becoming a weapon. I didn't know what I would do with it yet, but I knew the next part of this story wouldn't belong to them. It would belong to me. I didn't know how far down I was digging. I just knew that the deeper I went, the more the truth revealed itself as a bottomless pit waiting for both of them. The deeper I went into their messages, the less it felt like I was reading a mistake, and the more it felt like I was reading a secret relationship that had been going on right in front of me. It didn't take long before the tone stopped pretending to be innocent. I found hotel addresses, room numbers, little inside jokes about traffic and check-in times. Messages like, "I booked the same place as last time. You know the one," followed by heart emojis and late night. "Can't wait to feel you again." One thread hit harder than the rest. Fiona texted, "She's at work late tonight. You can come over if you want. I'll make your favorite." He replied, "You always do. I miss you." There was no way to misread that. It wasn't emotional confusion. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a routine. Then came the photos. Fiona in Daniel's hoodie, curled up on a couch that wasn't mine. Fiona in lingerie, half covered, with captions like, "Think about this at your meeting today," and "You know I'm always worth the risk." He responded with things he never said to me anymore. Compliments, pet names, promises. I didn't get angry. I just recorded every line. Screenshot after screenshot. I emailed them to myself, saved them in multiple folders, backed them up where they couldn't just accidentally disappear. I went from heartbroken wife to quiet archivist, collecting evidence of a story I hadn't realized I was starring in. But the worst part wasn't even the messages themselves. It was how normal they made it all sound. They talked about me like I was a minor inconvenience. "She's been suspicious lately," Daniel wrote once. Fiona answered, "Just be extra sweet for a while. You know she always calms down." Like I was some dumb, predictable security system they'd learned how to bypass. It was around that time Fiona organized a charity run in town. She was so proud of it, posting about it nonstop, telling everyone how much the event meant to her. Daniel was suddenly super excited about it too, which was funny because he'd never cared about running in his life. But he talked about supporting her and doing something good together, as if he was the perfect brother-in-law. That morning, before we left the house, I checked their chat. It had become a habit. Him, "You ready for today? Bet you'll look hot in that shirt." Her, "Anything for you. Stay close during the run. You can motivate me." Him, "You know I will. Meet you by the registration table before everyone else." I put my phone down, looked at my reflection for a second, and then walked out like nothing was wrong. At the event, they were exactly who I expected them to be. Fiona was the glowing organizer, Daniel the helpful, supportive guy. They laughed together, touched each other's arms a little too casually, stood just a bit too close. And I watched it all, knowing exactly what they had been saying to each other a few hours earlier. During the run, they stayed side by side the whole time. I stayed in the back, not because I couldn't keep up, but because I wanted distance. I wanted to see them the way everyone else did. To everyone else, they looked like family having fun. To me, they looked like a punchline I hadn't agreed to. Afterward, while Fiona was giving her little thank you speech to the crowd, talking about community and trust and support, my phone buzzed. I checked the screen. "Fiona, you were amazing today. Couldn't take my eyes off you." "Daniel, you know I'd run a marathon if you asked." I stood there, surrounded by people cheering for her, and I realized I wasn't just being lied to privately. I was being humiliated publicly. And the thing that stung the most was how easy it would have been to confront them right then and there. Grab the mic, show the texts. Watch everything implode. But I didn't. I stayed silent. When you're standing at the edge of that level of betrayal, you have two choices. You can scream, or you can start writing everything down. I chose the second. That was the day I truly switched into rational mode. No more questioning my gut. No more asking for reassurance. No more begging for honesty from people who had already decided honesty was optional. From that day on, I observed them with the same detachment you'd use to study a crime scene. I synced Daniel's calendar to my phone again. I compared it with Fiona's work schedule, her posts, her busy days. Patterns emerged. Client dinner, on his calendar matched, exhausted, going to bed early, text from her to her fiancé, Alex. Gym, on his schedule lined up with hotel reservation confirmations in his email. I noted dates, times, locations. I made a list of every day I knew they had slept together, every alibi they had used, every lie they had told in my face. The more information I had, the less I felt like a victim and the more I felt like someone preparing a case. Not for the court, for something better, the court of everyone they cared about. Because around this time, Fiona's wedding planning kicked into high gear. She'd been engaged to Alex for a while, and as we got closer to the date, everything in her life became about that one day. The perfect dress, the perfect flowers, the perfect vows. She asked me to be her maid of honor with this emotional little speech about how she couldn't imagine walking down the aisle without me there. I said yes, quietly, calmly, like a good sister. But by then, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. About a month before the wedding, I stopped hoping I would wake up and find out it was all some misunderstanding. I accepted the version of reality their messages showed me. And once I accepted it, planning became easy. Her wedding wouldn't just be a celebration. It would be the stage. I knew there would be almost 200 guests. Family, friends, coworkers, people who believed in them, people who saw them as this charming couple surrounded by love and support. People who had no idea Fiona was using her fiancé as a prop while sleeping with my husband in the background. I didn't cancel anything. I didn't warn anyone. I didn't pull her aside for some emotional confrontation in the kitchen. I didn't give her the chance to spin it, cry, or blame me for a misunderstanding. I didn't want a private apology. I wanted the truth to stand in front of everyone, without her filters and excuses. I wasn't going to ruin her wedding day. I was just going to stop protecting it. And as the invitations went out, the dress fittings happened, and the seating charts changed for the 10th time, I stayed right where I always was, by her side, smiling, listening, nodding, all while carrying the full weight of everything she thought I still didn't know. Then, one morning, I woke up and realized there was nothing left to prepare. The messages were saved. The dates were logged. The lies were documented. The guest list was confirmed. The microphone would be waiting for me at the reception. The only thing left was time. And time, as it turns out, is very good at bringing days like that closer. Eventually, that day came. The day I stood in front of a room full of people, looked my sister in the eyes, and decided it was finally time to let the truth speak for itself. Fiona's wedding day looked exactly the way she always imagined it. Flawless, curated, sparkling with the kind of beauty that makes people forget real life exists. She stood there glowing, floating more than walking, acting like she was stepping into a future she deserved. And Daniel, he looked at me with this smug, almost relieved expression, like he truly believed I hadn't figured anything out. Like I was still the same trusting wife who apologized for things that weren't her fault. He had no idea the script had already changed. When the time came for speeches, Fiona squeezed my hand, smiling like she hadn't spent the past 2 years betraying me in the ugliest way possible. I walked up calmly, steady, almost gentle. The room was warm, full of laughter, people clinking glasses and waiting for the emotional maid of honor tribute. I took the microphone and smiled back at her. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's wedding," I said softly. "I just want to tell the truth." A little laugh rippled through the crowd. They thought it was a joke. Daniel shifted in his seat, confused but still confident. Fiona tilted her head, waiting for something sentimental. I started exactly the way everyone expected. Warm, nostalgic, talking about childhood, about sisterhood, about how much she meant to me. People nodded, relaxed, thinking it would be a sweet moment they'd clap for at the end. Then I let the tone change, smoothly, quietly, without anger. "I've learned something recently," I continued. "Something about trust, about loyalty, and about what people do when they think no one is watching." I pulled out my phone. So instead of giving a traditional speech, I'd like to read a few messages. The room froze before the words even landed. I opened the thread I'd saved, the one with the softest, sweetest, most unmistakable lines. I read Fiona's message first. "She's at work tonight. You can come over. I'll make your favorite." The silence hit instantly, like the air had been sucked out of the building. Then I read Daniel's reply. "I miss you. I'll be there soon. Don't start without me." A harsh gasp sliced through the room. Someone dropped a glass. Alex, sitting next to Fiona, slowly turned his head toward her like he didn't recognize the woman beside him. Fiona's face drained of color, her lips parting but no sound coming out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shake. I didn't even blink. I only want to share a few more, I said, scrolling with a calmness that scared even me. I read a second one. Wearing your hoodie. Smells like you. Wish you were here. And then Daniel's response. You look better in it than I ever will. There wasn't a single shout. Not one person tried to interrupt. There was only absolute, suffocating silence. And that silence did all the work for me. Alex pushed his chair back, so hard it screeched. He stood up without looking at her, walked out in complete disbelief, and didn't glance back even once. A few of Fiona's bridesmaids covered their mouths. Her friends stared at her like she had spontaneously turned into a stranger in front of them. Daniel tried to stand, sputtering something that wasn't even a sentence, but two of his cousins stepped in front of him, blocking him like they were embarrassed to even let him speak. Fiona finally broke. She collapsed into her seat, shaking her head, whispering excuses that died the second they left her mouth. It's not what it looks like, she kept saying, until she realized everyone had already made up their minds. I didn't need to read more. 2 messages had been enough to detonate the illusion she'd spent months building. So I lowered the phone, stepped back from the mic, and gave them the last line I'd been saving. Congratulations to the 2 of you, I said quietly. Because whatever today was supposed to be, it definitely isn't that. A clean, controlled mic drop. I walked off the stage while the room behind me imploded. People whispering, others storming out, some crying, some furious. The wedding planner team Fiona had hired looked paralyzed. Her mother-in-law looked like she'd witnessed an exorcism. Fiona tried to chase after Alex, but he shook her off like she was a stranger grabbing his arm on the street. Daniel kept trying to reach for me, calling my name like I owed him a conversation, but no one let him near me. It was almost poetic. He'd spent years crossing lines, and now suddenly every single one of them was blocked. The wedding didn't just fall apart. It disintegrated. Family members took sides. Some yelled. Some left in silence. Some demanded explanations. Fiona cried so loudly you could hear her from the hallway. Daniel sat down with his head in his hands, and for the first time, he didn't look confident at all. He looked exactly like what he was, exposed. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I didn't need to. I'd done what I came there to do. I'd let the truth exist in the open, with no filter, no excuses, no more protecting people who never protected me. I slipped out the back exit while chaos filled the reception hall. I didn't want applause. I didn't want questions. I didn't want closure from people who had never offered me honesty. I just wanted distance. As I walked away from the venue, the muffled sounds of shouting and crying behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Quiet. Real quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you finally stop carrying someone else's lies. I thought it was the end. I thought exposing them at the wedding was the final chapter. But I was wrong. The truth doesn't just end a story. Sometimes it starts the fallout. And the fallout was only beginning. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout in real time, but it didn't take long for the consequences to reach me. The next morning, my cousin sent me a video. Someone at the wedding had recorded part of my speech. No editing. No commentary. Just my voice reading the messages that destroyed everything. It spread fast. Not viral, but fast enough to reach the people who mattered, including Daniel's workplace. He'd always presented himself as the responsible, stable, trustworthy type, the man management could count on. But apparently, his company didn't appreciate the idea of their marketing director cheating with his sister-in-law and having the whole thing blow up at a public event. I heard later that the CEO called him into her office, showed him the video, and told him point-blank that someone with integrity issues of this scale couldn't represent them. He resigned the same day, not because he wanted to, but because the other option was getting fired. Fiona's downfall was just as brutal. Her entire business was built on image, trust, romance, the idea that she could create the perfect day. But when brides found out she had destroyed her own wedding and someone else's marriage, well, that kind of reputation doesn't survive. Clients canceled their bookings. Some demanded refunds she couldn't afford. Within a month, her shop closed. The girl who sold fairy tale weddings ended up with nothing but her own disaster. Their social circles turned cold too. Friends who once defended them went silent. Family members stopped making excuses for them. No one wanted to be associated with the kind of betrayal they had pulled off. It wasn't just messy, it was cruel. And people don't forget cruel. Both of them tried contacting me. Long texts, voicemails, a few pathetic apologies mixed with excuses about confusion and emotional mistakes. Messages about how they never meant to hurt me. Daniel even tried sending a handwritten letter, as if bad penmanship could undo 2 years of lying. I didn't respond to any of it. I wasn't punishing them. I just stopped rescuing them. And when you stop rescuing someone who's used to you carrying the weight, the fall feels like punishment, even though it's really just gravity doing its job. After the wedding, I moved out of the house Daniel and I shared. I found a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, nothing symbolic. Just mine. A space without lies echoing in the walls. I threw out the things that felt heavy, kept the things that felt honest, and rebuilt my routines piece by piece. Work became a safe place again. I started taking on bigger projects, not because I needed distraction, but because I finally had the mental space to care about my own life more than someone else's secrets. Healing wasn't beautiful. It wasn't some dramatic transformation. It was slow, weird, uncomfortable, like learning how to breathe in a room that stopped smelling like smoke. The more control I took back, the less power their betrayal had over my day-to-day thoughts. One morning, I realized I'd gone a full hour without thinking about either of them. It felt small but real, and real was enough. Then there was Alex. We didn't plan to stay in touch. It just happened. At first, it was practical, checking in, sharing updates about how our families were handling the fallout, sending each other the occasional darkly funny observation about being the unwilling stars of a wedding meltdown. But those conversations turned into something softer. Two people comparing notes on the same nightmare. Two people who knew exactly what it felt like to be blindsided by the people we trusted the most. There was no pressure, no rush, no pretending, just honesty, which felt almost luxurious after everything we'd been through. We started meeting for coffee, then dinner, then long walks where neither of us tried to fix the other. We just existed in the same space without feeling like we had to apologize for being hurt. Feelings didn't explode. They unfolded, quietly, respectfully, the way healthy things do. For once, I wasn't carrying the emotional load by myself. For once, someone was meeting me where I stood instead of taking advantage of the fact that I wasn't the kind of person who raised her voice. I don't know exactly what we'll become, but I know this. Whatever it is, it's built on truth. And after everything that happened, that's more than enough. Looking back, people sometimes ask if I regret exposing Fiona and Daniel at the wedding. If I wish I'd chosen a less dramatic moment. Maybe some people would have handled it differently. Maybe someone else would have kept the peace to avoid conflict. But here's what I know now. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is precision. When you stop screaming and start telling the truth plainly, without anger, without theatrics, it hits harder than any revenge plot ever could. If I learn one thing, it's that silence isn't just stronger than revenge. It's more accurate. So I'll leave you with this final question. The kind people ask on AITA, but rarely answer honestly. If you were me, would you have told the truth at that wedding?